I never expected my life to take such a dramatic turn. That rainy Tuesday evening I was working late at Carter & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm where I'd been employed for the past 3 years. At 26, I was already known for my dedication and attention to detail, qualities that had caught the eye of our CEO, Robert Winchester. As I was gathering me things to leave, his secretary called. "Mr. Winchester would like to see you in his office." "Alexander." "That's me, Michael Mitchell." Alex. To me, though I didn't have many, work had become my life since my last relationship ended badly a year ago. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. Mr. Winchester's office occupied the corner of the building with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a spectacular view of the city skyline. He was standing at those windows when I entered, his silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. "Alex, please sit down," he said without turning around. Something in his voice made me nervous. I took a seat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. When he finally turned to face me, his expression was unreadable. "How long have you been with us, Alex?" "3 years, sir, and in that time you've proven yourself to be exceptionally capable and discreet." I nodded, uncertain where this was heading. "What I'm about to propose initially unconventional," he continued, finally sitting down behind his massive mahogany desk. "You can refuse, of course, and nothing will change regarding your position here, but I believe you're the perfect candidate." He opened a drawer and pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the desk. I picked it up, my curiosity piqued. Photo showed a young man, probably around my age, with Winchester's strong jaw but softer features. He had dark hair that fell slightly into his eyes, and a smile that seemed to hide something sad. "This is my son, William Winchester Sadie's, 24, brilliant, graduated from Yale last year, but he's struggling." I waited, still not understanding my role in this. "William is gay, Winchester continued, his voice carefully controlled, "which isn't the problem. The problem is his taste in men. He consistently chooses individuals who take advantage of him. His last boyfriend nearly bankrupted him before this." My confusion must have shown on my face, because Winchester leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I want you to date my son, Alex. I'll pay you $100,000 to be his boyfriend for 6 months. The words hung in the air between us. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "Sir, I am not gay," he raised an eyebrow. "I know that's partly why you're perfect for this. You're responsible, trustworthy, and most importantly, I won't actually fall for him. I need someone to show him what a healthy relationship looks like, to rebuild his confidence, and then let him down gently when the time comes." I sat there, stunned by the proposition. The amount offered was more than my annual salary, enough to pay off my student loans and put a down payment on an apartment. "Sir, I don't know if I can," I started, but he cut me off. "Take the night to think about ithers. My personal number." He handed me a business card and, "Alex, this conversation happened." I left his office in a daze, the photograph of William still clutched in my hand. On the subway ride home, I couldn't stop looking at it. There was something captivating about his ice of vulnerability that made my chest tighten. Unexpectedly, my apartment felt specially empty that night. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and tried to think rationally. The ethical implications were troubling, to say the least. Pretending to be gay, deceiving someone emotionally, it went against everything I believed in. But then I thought about my own financial situation. Me, Sister Sarah's medical bills were piling up, and my parents were struggling to help her with this money. I could make a real difference in their lives. I barely slept that night. By morning I had convinced myself it would be like an acting job. 6 months, then a clean break. I could do that. I called Winchester before heading to work. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "but I have a conditions." "Name them first." "No one at work can know about this arrangement. Second, I want the money in monthly installments, not all at once. And third, if at any point I feel this is harming William, I walk away." "Agreed," Winchester said without hesitation. "Come to my office after work. We'll discuss the details that evening." Winchester laid out his plan. He would arrange for William and me to accidentally meet at a charity gala that weekend. Everything had topia natural. "William's quite perceptive," Winchester warned. "If he suspects this is arranged, it will destroy him." He handed me a file containing information about William, his interests, hobbies, favorite restaurants. It felt uncomfortably like studying for an undercover mission. "One more thing," Winchester added as I was leaving. "William doesn't know I'm aware of his sexuality. He hasn't come out to me yet. Part of why I'm doing this, I want him to feel secure enough to tell me." The complexity of the situation was starting to sink in. I was about to step into a web of deception that could hurt many people if handled wrongly. That night, I studied William's file like my life depended on it. He was a literature professor at the local university, specializing in Victorian novels. He played piano, enjoyed independent films, and volunteered at an animal shelter. The more I read, the more real he became, and the more my conscience nagged at me. Security Gala was held at the city's prestigious art museum. I arrived wearing a new suit that Winchester had insisted on buying me, charcoal grey Tom Ford that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Winchester had texted me earlier, William will be by the Monet exhibition at 9 a.m. Make it look natural. My heart was pounding as I navigated through the crowd of Seattle's elite. I'd practiced my story countless times. I was there representing Carter and Associates, supporting the arts as part of our community outreach program. I spotted him before he saw me. William was standing alone by a painting of waterlies, looking even more striking in person. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, his dark hair slightly tz, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. About his solitary figure made him seem vulnerable yet untouchable. Following our script, he positioned myself next to him, pretending to study the painting. After a moment, I spoke. I've always wondered if Monet was nearsighted, or if he just really liked blur. William turned, startled by my comment, then laughed. His laugh was genuine, unexpected. It transformed his whole face. Actually, he had cataracts in his later years. William replied, it affected how he perceived color and light. Some art historians believe it influenced his later work significantly. Really, I found myself genuinely interested. I had no idea. Most people don't. I'm William, by the way. He extended his hand. Alex handshake lingered a fraction longer than necessary. I noticed his hands were soft but had calluses on the fingertips from playing piano. I realized, remembering the file. Are you an art enthusiast, Alex? He asked heartily. I'm here representing my firm. Numbers are more my territory than brushstrokes. A man of logic and reason. He smiled. How very Gradgrind of you. I caught the literary reference. Thank God for that file. Hard times, Dickens, though I'd like to think I'm not quite that soulless. His eyes lit up. You know your Victorian literature. Ich know enough to be dangerous at cocktail parties, I replied, feeling guilty about the deception. Everything I knew about Victorian literature came from cramming the night before. We fell into easy conversation. William was articulate and passionate when he spoke about literature, his hands moving expressively. I found myself watching the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he bit his lower lip when thinking, would you like to get a drink? I asked, surprising myself with how natural it felt. I'd love to, he said, then hesitated. But I should warn you, I'm gay. If that's an issue. My heart clenched at his cautious tone. How many times had he been rejected at this moment? It's not an issue, I said softly. Actually, I was hoping it might be a date. The smile that broke across his face was radiant, and for a moment I forgot this was all an arrangement. I forgot about his father, the money, everything except how beautiful he looked in that memento. Found a quiet corner with 2 glasses of champagne. William told me about his classes, his students, his love of teaching. I shared carefully edited stories about my work, my family, my life. Every laugh, every shared glance felt both wonderful and terrible. That evening marked the beginning of what would become the most confusing period of my life. William and I exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks we began seeing each other regularly. Our first real date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. William was wearing a blue sweater that made his eyes look impossibly bright, and I found myself struggling to remember this was all pretend. So what made you decide to teach literature? I asked over pasta. William twirled his fork thoughtfully. I had this amazing English teacher in high school, Mrs. Patterson. She showed me how literature isn't just about stories, it's about understanding human nature, exploring different perspectives. Plus, headed with a self-deprecating smile, I was a lonely kid. Books were my best friends. Lonely. I find that hard to believe. His expression clouded slightly. Let's just say being gay at an all-boys prep school isn't exactly a recipe for social success, especially when your father is Robert Winchester. I nearly choked on my UN. It was the first time he'd mentioned his father. You know who my father is? Hissed, misinterpreting my reaction. The name's familiar, I said carefully. He's quite well known in business circles. William nodded, pushing his food around his plate. He doesn't know about me, about being gay. I mean, I've tried to tell him so many times, but he trailed off, then forced a smile. Sorry, heavy topic for a second date. I reached across the table and took his hand, hating myself for the deception, even as I tried to comfort him. His fingers intertwined with mine naturally, as if they belonged there. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a comfortable routine. We'd meet for coffee between his classes, have dinner at quiet restaurants, spend evenings watching classic films at his apartment. William lived in a cozy brownstone near the university, its walls lined with books and old movie posters. One evening, about a month into our relationship, we were curled up on his couch, watching Casablanca. William was explaining the film's historical context, his head resting on my shoulder. "You know what I love about you," he said. Suddenly me heart skipped. "What you listen, really listen. Most guys I've dated were only interested in what they could get from me." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. If he only knew the truth. But I was starting to realize something terrifying. I loved listening to him. I loved how his face lit up when he talked about his favorite books, how he unconsciously hummed while cooking, how he could spend hours discussing the symbolism in a single poem. Winchester was depositing the monthly payments as promised, but I found myself thinking about the money less and less. Instead, I thought about William's laugh, his kindness to his students, the way he always remembered how I liked my coffee. One rainy Sunday afternoon, we were browsing in a used bookstore when William suddenly pulled me between the shelves and kissed me. It wasn't our first kiss. We'd shared several by then, but this one felt different, deeper, more urgent. When we broke apart, he looked at me with such trust and affection that I felt physically ill. What was I doing? How had I let things go this far? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about William's father, the money in my account, the web of lies I was weaving tighter with each passing day. But more than that, I thought about William and the terrifying realization that I might be falling for him for real. The situation became more complicated when William invited me to a faculty dinner at the university. As I watched him interact with his colleagues, his passion for teaching evident in every gesture, the weight of my deception felt unbearable. "Alex has been such a positive influence," I overheard one of his colleagues telling another. "William seems so happier lately." Later that evening in his apartment, William opened a bottle of wine and sat beside me at his piano. His danced across the keys, playing Chopin Nocturne in E-flat major. "This was me mother's favorite piece," he said softly. "She used to play it all the time before she passed away." I knew about his mother's death from the file, but hearing him talk about it personally was different. She had died when he was 15, leaving him alone with a father who buried himself in work rather than deal with grief. "Sometimes I think that's why I can't tell my father about being gay." William continued, his fingers still moving over the keys. "After Mom died, it felt like I had to be perfect to keep him from disappearing completely." I pulled him close, feeling his body shake slightly. He turned and kissed me, and for the first time one has led to another and another. Before I knew it, we were in his bedroom, clothes scattered on the floor. "Are you sure?" he whispered, knowing I should stop this, but unable to resist the way his hands felt on my skin. "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied. That night changed everything. Making love to William wasn't part of the plan, wasn't something I'd ever imagined doing with another man, but it felt right in a way that terrified me. His touch set my skin on fire, and when he whispered my name in the darkness, I knew I was in serious trouble. The next morning I woke up to find William watching me, a soft smile on his face. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said, tracing his fingers along my jaw. I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I pulled him close to hide my expression, my mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of this was supposed to happen. That afternoon I met with Robert Winchester in a private club downtown. "Things seem to be progressing well," he said, sipping his scotch. "William appears happier than I've seen him in years, sir." "I need to tell you something," I started, but he cut me off. "The quarterly board meeting is next week. William usually attends as a formality, given his trust fund stake in the company. I think it would be good if you were there." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Nonsense, he's perfect. You already work for the company, so your presence won't seem unusual. Besides," he added with a calculating look, "it might encourage William to finally come out to me, if he sees how accepting the company environment is." I left the meeting feeling trapped. The situation was spiraling out of control. I was falling in love with William, sleeping with him, all while taking his father's money to deceive him. The thought made me physically sick. The week leading up to the board meeting was torture. William was excited about me attending, seeing it as a chance to be together in a professional setting. Each smile, each loving gesture from him felt like a knife twisting in my chest. The morning of the meeting, William surprised me by showing up at my apartment with coffee. I thought we could go together. Hesed looking particularly handsome in his tailored suit. I know it's silly, beauty I'm nervous. About you meeting my father. If he only knew the board meeting washled in the main conference room of Winchester Tower as we walked in together. I caught Robert Winchester's sappering nod. William's hand brushed against mine briefly before we took our seats on opposite sides of the table. Hemmeting proceeded normally until the discussion turned to the company's charitable initiatives. William spoke up suggesting increased support for LGBTQ+ youth programs. There's a significant need, he said, his voice steady but his hands slightly shaking. Many young people face rejection from their families, leading to homelessness and other challenges. I watched Robert Winchester's face carefully. He was playing his part perfectly, appearing thoughtfully receptive to the idea. After the meeting, William pulled me aside in an empty corridor. I'm going to tell him, he whispered, today. I can't keep hiding who we am, who we are. My blood ran cold. William, wait. No, I'm ready, he said firmly. Will, you come with me. The moment I'd been dreading had arrived. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, Robert Winchester appeared around the corner. William, do you have a moment? William squeezed my hand. Actually, Father, I'd like to talk to you too, and I'd like Alex to be there. Winchester's office felt smaller than I remembered. William sat next to me on the leather couch, while his father took his usual position behind the desk. Father William, began his voice, trembling slightly, there's something I've needed to tell you for a long time. I'm gay. The silence that followed was excruciating. Robert Winchester's face remained carefully neutral, and Alex. William continued, taking my hand. Alex is my boyfriend. I couldn't breathe, couldn't look at either of them. I see, Robert Winchester said slowly. And how long has this been going on? We met at the charity gala 3 months ago, William replied, then turned to me with a smile that shattered my heart. It was the best night of my life. I pulled my hand away from his, standing abruptly. I couldn't do this anymore, William, I said, my voice rough. There's something I need to tell you, Alex. Robert Winchester's warning tone cut through the air. No, I said firmly. This ends now. William looked between us, confusion clouding his features. What's going on, Father? How do you know? Alex, the words felt like acid in my throat. Your father hired me to date you. The silence that followed was deafening. William's face went completely blank, a defense mechanism I'd come to recognize when he was processing something painful. I don't understand, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. To charity gala wasn't an accident. I see, and your father arranged everything. He hired me to make you feel secure enough to come. Outwords sounded even worse spoken aloud. William turned to his father, color draining from his face. Is this true, Robert? Winchester stood, his composure cracking for the first time. Son, I was trying to help. I've known about your sexuality for years, but you seemed so afraid to tell me, so you hired someone to manipulate me. William's voice rose, trembling with anger and hurt, to pretend to love me. William, please. He started reaching for him. He recoiled from my touch, as if burned. Don't touch me. His eyes met mine, filled with such pain. It took my breath away. Was any of it real, or was it all just a well-paid performance? It started that way, I admitted, but things changed. My feelings for you, your feelings. He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. How much did they pay you for those $250? Zero, I whispered the truth. Finally coming out for 6 months. William stumbled back, as it physically struck. 6 months. Sawyer were just going to disappear after that. His voice broke. After I fell in love with you. William. Robert Winchester moved around his desk. I only wanted to help. I could see how lonely you were. Lonely. William's voice was razor sharp. You thought I was lonely, so you bought me a boyfriend, like some sort of twisted escort service. That's not. I trusted you. William turned to me, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. Last night, when we was that part of these of eyes, too, I felt physically ill. No, William, please. What I feel for you, Israel, real. He backed away from both of us. None of this was real. It was all just another one of my father's business transactions. He turned to his father, straightening his shoulders despite his obvious pain. Congratulations, Father. You got what you wanted. I came out. I hope it was worth it. Before either of us could respond, he walked out, closing the door quietly. Bend him somehow. That quiet click was worse than if he'd slammed it. Go after him, Robert Winchester ordered. I rounded in him. Haven't you done enough? Haven't we both done enough? I left his office and ran down to the street, but William was already gone. I tried calling him, but my number had already been blocked. When I went to his apartment, the doorman refused to let me up that night. I sat in my apartment, staring at the check from Winchester Enterprises. The money that had seemed so important 3 months ago now made me sick to look at the next few weeks, where a blur of misery. William had completely disappeared from my life. He'd taken a leave of absence from the university, and none of his colleagues would tell me where he'd gone. I couldn't blame them. It tried to return the money to Robert Winchester, but he refused to accept it. "Keep it," he said, looking older than he'd ever seen him. "Consider it hazard pay for destroying my relationship with my son." The guilt was consuming me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw William's face in that moment of betrayal. I kept remembering small moments, the way he'd make tea when I was stressed, how he'd leave notes in books he thought I'd enjoy, the sound of his laugh during laziest Sunday mornings. After a month of this, I made a decision. I wrote William a letter. "Dear William, I know I have no right to contact you, and you have every right to throw this away unread, but I need to tell you the truth. All of it. Yes, your father hired me. Yes, I took his money. Yes, I deceived you in the worst possible way. These are unforgivable acts, and I will regret them for the rest of my life. But here's what else is true. I fell in love with you, not because of the money, not because of the arrangement, but because of who you are. I fell in love with your passion for literature, your kindness to your students, the way you hum while cooking. I fell in love with how you see the world, how you find beauty in small moments, how you make everyone around you feel heard and valued. I fell in love with the way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking hard, how you always cry at the end of Casablanca, how you can quote entire passages of Victorian literature from memory. I fell in love with your strength, your vulnerability, your capacity for joy. Despite everything life has thrown at you, the arrangement was supposed to last 6 months. I broke it after 3, because I couldn't bear the deception anymore, not because the job was difficult, but because what I felt for you became real and the lies were killing me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for another chance. I destroyed that possibility with my actions. I just needed you to know that while the beginning was a lie, my love for you is the truest thing I've ever felt. I've donated the entire amount I received to the LGBT+ youth program you spoke about at the board meeting. It doesn't make up for what I did, but maybe it can help someone else avoid the pain I'd caused you. You deserved so much better than what your father and I did to you. You deserved honesty and real love, not manipulation and lies. I'm so sorry I wasn't brave enough to give you that. Be happy, William. You deserve that more than anyone I've ever known. Alex. I sent the letter to his office at the university, not expecting a response. A week later, I received a single line in return. "The truth would have been enough." Those 5 words haunted me for months. The truth would have been enough. They echoed in my mind during sleepless nights, during long days at work, during every moment I caught myself thinking about William. I threw myself into my work, took on extra projects, anything to keep my mind occupied, but everything reminded me of him. Every bookstore I passed, every piano I heard, every rainy Sunday afternoon brought back memories I couldn't escape. 6 months after the confrontation, Winchester Tower. I was walking through the park where William and I used to have lunch. It was autumn now, the trees painted in shades of gold and red. I sat on our usual bench watching leaves dance in the wind. This seat taken, it looked up my heart. Stopping, William stood there, hands in his pockets, looking thinner than I remembered, but still beautiful. "No," I managed to say. "It's free." He sat down, leaving careful space between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I read your letter," he finally said, watching the leaves fall several times. Actually, I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I went to Paris," he continued, "did some teaching at Thessalban. It gave me time to think." "How was it?" "Beautiful, lonely." He turned to look at him. "I kept seeing things I wanted to bear with you, before remembering I couldn't." "William." He held up a hand. "Let finish. What you and my father did was manipulative and cruel. It took me a long time to process that betrayal, but something you wrote in your letter kept coming back to me, about how the truth would have killed the arrangement, not saved it." He shifted slightly on the bench. "I talked to some people at the university. They confirmed you stopped taking payments 3 months in, that you tried to return the money. It felt dirty. I admitted by then my feelings for you were real. Taking money for that felt wrong." "When did it change?" he asked quietly. "When did it become real?" He thought carefully before answering. "Remember that night at the Italian restaurant, when you told me about buying lonely in school? That was the first crack. But I think I really knew at the bookstore that rainy Sunday when you kissed me between the shelves, that kiss wasn't for show. There was no one watching, no one to perform for it. Was just us. William was silent for a long moment. I've been angry for a long time, he said finally, at my father, at you, at myself, for not seeing through it, but mostly I've been sad. Because, despite everything what we had felt real to me, and finding out it started as a lie, didn't change how real those feelings were. They were real. I whispered, they still are. He turned to face me fully. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying I trust you, but I've spent 6 months trying to forget you, and I can't. So maybe we could start over with the truth. This time my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I'd like that coffee, he suggested, standing up. I know a place nearby. As we walked through the falling leaves, we kept a careful distance between us. This wasn't a fair tale ending. There was too much hurt to bet much betrayal for that. But maybe it was a beginning, a real one this time built on truth instead of lies. The coffee shop was small and quiet, tucked away on a side street. We sat at a corner table, steam rising from our cups between UST space, felt both familiar and strange, like revisiting a place you've only seen in dreams. Tell me something true, William said, wrapping his hands around his cup. Something I don't know about you. I took a deep breath. My father was an alcoholic, left when I was 12. That's why I took the job with your father. I've been saving to help my mum retire. She's been working 2 jobs since I was a kid. William nodded slowly. That does an excuse what you did, but it helps me understand. I haven't spoken to my father in 15 years. I continued, when you told me about your relationship with your father it hit close to home. Maybe that's why I couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. I saw how much you wanted his acceptance, and I wanted to give you that, even if it was built on lies. I was wrong, I admitted. I thought I was helping, but I was just making it worse. William was quiet. For a moment, stirring his coffee. I talked to my father, he said finally, in Paris. He called me every week until I finally answered. How did that go? It was hard, painful, but honest. Maybe for the first time in years he looked up at me. He told me he'd known I was gay since I was 16, found some letters I'd written to a boy at school. Why didn't he say anything? He said he was afraid of saying the wrong thing, of pushing me away, so he tried to control the situation instead, like he does with everything else. William's laugh was bitter, classic Robert Winchester. Problem solving. Has anything changed between you? We're working on IELTS, seeing a therapist, so am I. He paused. He asked about you. My heart skipped. What did you say? I told him I didn't know, that I needed time to figure things out. He met my eyes. I'm still figuring things out. I understand, I said softly. I don't expect anything, William, just being here talking to you. It's more than I deserve. See, that's the thing, he said, leaning forward slightly. I spent months being angry about what I deserved and didn't deserve, but life isn't about what we deserve, it's about what we choose. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin. I choose to believe that real feelings can grow from false beginnings. I choose to believe that people can change, can learn from their mistakes. I choose to believe in second chances. His voice softened. But I need talk now. What do you choose? I looked at his hand so close to mine, at the familiar curves of his fingers that I'd memorized over those 3 months together. I choose honesty, I said, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. I choose to be worthy of your trust, even if it takes years. I choose you, William. I choose us. If there can be an us again. He was quiet for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately moved his hand those final few inches to cover mine. We start slow, he said. No lies, no games, no manipulation, just 2 people getting to know each other, really know each other. This time I'd like that. Me to he squeezed my hand gently. Before, let him go now. Tell me another truth. We sat in that coffee shop for hours, sharing truths big and small. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, of doubt, of pain, but it was real, and maybe that could be enough. The weeks that followed were an exercise in patience and vulnerability. We met for coffee twice a week, each time peeling back another layer of truth. Sometimes the conversations were light childhood memories, embarrassing stories, secret dreams. Other times they cut deeper, exposing the raw wounds we were both still trying to heal. What was real? William asked, one rainy afternoon, his voice barely audible over the patter of raindrops against the coffee shop window from before. I need to know. I took me time answering, wanting to be precise, honest. The way I listened to you was real. The things I shared about my Childhood, my mother, my fears, those were all real. The way I felt when you kissed him, when you held me, when you trusted me with your stories, that was real. And what wasn't, our meeting wasn't real. The timing wasn't real. Some of my initials were calculated, designed to make you feel comfortable. The words tasted bitter. I studied you before Wemit. I knew your favorite authors, your coffee order, the music you liked. William absorbed this, his fingers tracing patterns on the table. That first night at the gala, I was there to meet you, I admitted, but dropping my drink on you was actually an accident. I was so nervous my hands were shaking. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Really, you were overwhelming, more than any file could have prepared me for. Tell me more, he said quietly, about how it changed when you started feeling real things. I closed my eyes, remembering there was this moment about 3 weeks in. We were at your place, and you were grating papers. You were wearing those reading glasses you hate, and Yahoo had ink on your fingers. You looked up and caught me watching you, and you smiled, this small, private smile. That's one. I first felt it, this ache in my chest, this desire to be worthy of that smile. When I opened my eyes, William was watching me intently. What else? The night you got sick, you had that terrible flu, remember? I stayed over to take care of you. You were delirious with fever, but you kept reaching for my hand. You said I swallowed hard. You said I made you feel safe. That's when I knew I had to stop taking the money, because I wanted to be that person for you, someone who made you feel safe, but I couldn't do it while living a lie. William was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, his voice rough. I remember that night. I remember thinking it was the first time anyone had taken care of me like that, since my mother died. I wanted to tell you the truth, then I confessed, but I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of hurting you, scared of facing what I don't fear makes us do terrible things, William said softly. I was scared, too scared of disappointing me father, scared of being alone, scared of letting someone see all of me. Maybe that's why I didn't question things that seemed too good to be true. He reached across the table, then a gesture that was becoming familiar again, and took my hand. But I'm not scared anymore. Angry sometimes, yes. Cautious definitely, but not scared. What changed? I did, he said simply. Paris gave me time to think, to understand myself better. I realized that what I felt for you, what I still feel for you, it's stronger than fear, stronger than anger. Even my heart thundered in my chest. William, I'm not saying I'm ready to pick up where we left off, he continued. But I'm ready to build something new, something real, one truth at a time. I suggested. He smiled, that some private smile that had first made my heart ache. One truth at a time. As autumn deepened into winter, our relationship began to shift, evolving into something both familiar and entirely new. We moved beyond coffee shops to quiet dinners, long walks, and eventually back to the bookstore, where everything had changed, standing between those same shelves where we'd kissed months ago. William ran his fingers along spines of books. It feels different now, he said. How so? Before everything felt predestined, like a story someone else was writing. Now it feels. He paused, searching for the right words. Raw, unscripted. Is that a good thing? He turned to face me. Yes, because at this time we're writing our own story. That night we had dinner at his apartment for the first time since everything fell apart. The space was both achingly familiar and strange, some things unchanged, others rearranged or replaced. I redecorated while I was away, he explained, noticing my wandering gaze. Needed a fresh start. I noticed the piano was still there, though in a different corner. Do you still play? Sometimes. He moved to the instrument, trailing his fingers across the keys without pressing them. I couldn't for a while. Too many memories. The night you taught me Chopin, I said softly. Yes. He sat at the piano bench, leaving space beside him. After a moment's hesitation, I joined him. Play something, I asked. His fingers hovered over the keys before beginning a piece I didn't recognize, something melancholic but hopeful, like rain clearing after a storm. What is that? Something I wrote in Paris. The music swelled slightly. It's about forgiveness. I listened, watching his hands move across the keys, remembering all the times I'd watched him play for. But this was different. There was no pretense. Now no performance, just William, sharing something real. When the piece ended, the silence felt heavy with unspoken words. I have something for Yao, said finally, standing and moving to his desk. He returned with a book, a well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, a favorite. I said, recognizing it. Open it. Inside on the title page he'd written, in vain have I struggled, it will not do, my feelings will not be repressed. Sometimes the greatest truth comes after the greatest deception. William, I looked up at him, my heart in my throat. "I've been thinking about Darcy and Elizabeth," he said quietly, "about Pride and Prejudice, about first impressions and second chances, about how sometimes we have to tear everything down to build something stronger, longer." "William," he moved closer, his hand finding mine on the piano keys, "I'm still angry sometimes. I still have moments of doubt, but I've realized something. What we're building now, it's stronger than what we had before, because this time we're choosing it with our eyes open, no secrets, no expectations, just us." I turned to me, hand over, intertwining our fingers. "I promise you, William, nothing but truth from now on. I know," he said softly. "Anthony." He kissed me. It was different from our previous kisses. Slower, more deliberate, tinged with both memory and discovery. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his stay. He whispered, "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Not for everything, not yet. But stay, be here in the morning. Let's see what truth looks like in daylight." That night we slept side by side, not touching except for our joined hands. It was a beginning again, but this time it was real. Morning came with gentle winter sunlight, filtering through William's windows. I woke to find him already awake, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" I asked softly. "I'm thinking about parallel universes," he replied, "about all the different ways this could have gone. If I had known the truth from the start, if you had never taken my father's offer, if we had met naturally in some bookstore or coffee shop, and I'm thinking that maybe this version, as messy and painful as it's been, maybe this is the version we needed, because now we know exactly what we have to lose." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The gesture was achingly familiar, yet new in its deliberate gentleness. "I made coffee," he said. "Want to have breakfast on the balcony?" The morning was cold but clear, and we sat wrapped in blankets, watching the city wake up. It felt like a metaphor, us suspended between our past and future, watching a new day unfold. "Tell me something true," William said. "Our morning ritual now. I'm scared," I admitted, "not of losing you though. I am, but of failing you again, of not being worthy of this second chance." He considered this, sipping his coffee. "Can I tell you what I think?" I nodded. "I think worthiness isn't something static. It's not a state you achieve and maintain. It's a choice you make every day, in every moment." He turned to face me, "Choosing to be worthy right now, by being honest about your fears. That's what I need, not perfection. Just this truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts, especially then." He reached for my hand. "You know what else I think? What I think we need to stop thinking about second chances. This isn't a do-over. We're not erasing what happened. We're building something new, using everything we've learned, the good and the bad, as our foundation." Later that day we went for a walk in the park where we'd reconnected months ago. The trees were bare now, the ground covered in frost. We sat on our bench, and William pulled out a small notebook. "I want to show you something," he said, opening to a dog-eared page. He started writing these when I was in Paris. "Things I wanted to say to you, questions I needed answered." He handed Meth notebook. Page after page was filled with his elegant handwriting, questions, observations, memories, feelings. Some entries were angry, others sad, some surprisingly tender. "I'd like to go through these with you," he said, "not all at once, but over time, each question, each memory. I want to understand everything, your perspective, your choices, your feelings, and I want you to understand mine, all of them." I asked, noting how many pages were filled. "All of them, no matter how hard or uncomfortable, because that's what real intimacy is. Isn't it? Not just sharing the easy truths, but facing the difficult ones together." I closed the notebook, carefully handing it back to him. "Where do we start?" He opened to the first page. "October 15th, he read, "the night we met. Tell me what you were thinking when you first saw me." And so we began another chapter of our story, sitting in through into sunlight, unraveling the complex web of truth and deception that had brought us here. With each question answered, each memory examined, we were building something new, something real, something strong, something entirely our own. As winter settled over the city, we fell into a new rhythm every evening after William finished his classes and I left the office. We'd meet somewhere, his apartment, a quiet cafe, the universe, and open his notebook. One particularly cold evening, curled up on his couch, he turned to an entry that made him pause. December 3rd, he read, "the night of the symphony." His voice was quiet. "I keep wondering, was the music real for you?" I closed my eyes, remembering that night's symphony was playing Tchaikovsky's Sixth. "You were wearing your grey suit, the one with the blue tie. During the second movement, you reached for my hand without looking at me, like it was the most natural thing in the